What's good, everyone, and welcome into a brand new edition of the World Class Hoops podcast here for Tuesday, October the 26th, 2021. I'm your host, Chris Rouse, coming to you from my hometown of Chicago, Illinois. And later today in the show, I'll be joined by Josh Buckhalter of Clocker Sports, Pippen Ain't Easy, and also of Soaring Down South. I mean, he writes for so many different spots, man. It's hard for me to keep up with all of them, but he'll be joining the show later. We'll be talking some Atlanta Hawks. We'll be talking some Chicago Bulls. We'll be talking NBA Eastern Conference impressions. But per usual, you can follow me, as you can see right there at the bottom of your screen, on Twitter at KingRouse21. Also, you can follow the show on Twitter at WCHP Media. Also, the show is available on all streaming platforms, including Anchor, Apple, Google, Spotify, and YouTube. Available at World Class Hoops Podcast, wherever podcasts and shows are heard or watched or whatever. But once again, another edition of the World Class Hoops podcast here for Tuesday, October the 26th, 2021. But as I mentioned, Josh Buckhalter, he'll join me a little bit later. We'll talk Hawks, and we're going to talk the rest of the Eastern Conference. But lately, Chicago Bulls last night, a 111-108 win against the Toronto Raptors. There you see led by DeMar DeRozan, 26 points, 6 assists. Chicago rolling right now, 4-0 after 2 wins against Detroit and then a win over New Orleans on Saturday. They beat Toronto last night, but it was not easy. It was not an easy win for the Bulls. 111-108 came down to the final possession. Fred VanVleet tried to hit Nikola Vucevic with the NBA 2K left-right step-back three, but it was off the front of the rim. Bulls managed to hold on despite some pretty comically bad possessions down the stretch of that ball game last night. I mean, who was that? Zach LaVine had the ball in the backcourt where he just started juggling the ball in the backcourt. Fred VanVleet just snatched it from him. Nikola Vucevic had a possession where he was running the ball into the front court, and he sort of kind of looked like Chris Webber. When Chris Webber caught that timeout against North Carolina, he had a play earlier in that play, he almost traveled, and it kind of looked like that. And Vucevic came to a stop. He tried to find a teammate. He just absolutely turned the ball over, and it almost cost the Bulls the game last night, but the Bulls able to hang on 111-108. They go to 4-0, and I mean, what a season they've been having so far. He talked about DeMar DeRozan, 26.6 assists last night. But how about Zach LaVine? I mean, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4.8 assists that you see on your screen. I mean, he's been one of the best three-point shooters in the league this season. And just his ability to walk into the outside shot. Just Zach LaVine's ability to walk into his outside shot, his ability to put up double-digit point totals in individual quarters. He did it with 15 in the first game of the season against Detroit, and then he did it later again against New Orleans, where he had 20 in the second quarter, and he just continues to keep rolling. Zach LaVine and the Bulls. It's just Chicago Bulls basketball is fun. I promise this is not solely a Bulls podcast, but I mean, right now the Bulls are one of 2 teams in the league right now that are at the top, and that's the Golden State Warriors. Utah's also undefeated. Utah's 2-0, Golden State's 3-0, and the Bulls are 4-0. So those are your last few remaining teams that have yet to take a loss so far in the 2021-2022 NBA season. But despite the fact the Bulls are 4-0, they still have had some problems offensively. I mean, they're still 20th in the league in points per game. That's through their 4 games. Most other teams have only played about 3 games anyway. But the Bulls right now, 20th in the league in scoring right now. But on the other side of that, they're absolutely getting things done on the defensive side of the basketball. I mean, just the way they've been able to go out there and clamp teams up. And last night, I know they gave up 108. They gave up 108 to Toronto, and then they gave up 112 to New Orleans in a blowout win. Even with that being said, the defense has been the star of the show for the Chicago Bulls team. And I keep talking about fun. And I keep talking about how fun this Bulls team has been, how fun they can be. But so far, the defense has controlled the show for this Bulls team. You're talking about Lonzo Ball. I even went on Twitter last night, which, by the way, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can follow me at KingRouse21. Lonzo Ball. I mean, I have him listed right now. He's my first listed candidate for Defensive Player of the Year this season. I mean, just the way he has improved this Bulls team, his ability to defend on the perimeter, his ability to close out on shots, players driving to the rim against him. He's got his hands up most times. His ability to close out. It's even rubbed off on teammates like Zach LaVine, a guy who has, throughout the years, even from myself, has had questions about his defense. His defense has improved vastly. His ability to move with his perimeter, his lateral movement on perimeter defense, his ability to close out on jump shots. Earlier in this season, I saw he and Lonzo Ball taking turns guarding Jeremy Grant in the post. Just the versatility that you're getting out of the perimeter defenders on this Bulls team, I think it really looks back to Lonzo Ball. I know it's a little bit too early to kind of be saying maybe Lonzo is the maybe it's a little too early to be saying Lonzo is the defensive player of the year candidate. But so far through 4 games, that's who I have so far. I got Lonzo Ball. He's the first player I have listed anyway. Lonzo Ball is my first defensive player of the year candidate right now. And at this time, I'm now joined by Josh Buckhalter of Clocker Sports. Yeah, salute to you, Josh. Thanks for joining in. Clocker Sports, Soaring Down South. I mean, you write all over the place, man. But you've been watching these Bulls, man. I'm happy to finally have you on the show. Let me get your thoughts on Lonzo and his defense, how it's changing the Bulls.
It's been great. I think the best part about this team overall has been how well the new guys have kind of gotten themselves acclimated quickly. All we heard all offseason was how clunky it was going to be and how the fit wasn't going to be there, and how really, in particular with Lonzo, how he wasn't the defender that we thought he was going to be, that he was being sold to us as. He's a help defender. Lonzo's been locking down at the point of attack all season. So, well, it's only been a few games, but you get my point. He's been doing his thing, and I'm really impressed by not only that, but his willingness to turn that defense into offense in transition.
And on top of that, with Lonzo, you're getting a true point guard, but the numbers have actually kind of taken the dip for Lonzo Ball. The Bulls have been struggling offensively as a whole, as I was mentioning earlier. 20th in the league in scoring. Do you attribute that to probably just trying to figure each other out in the early part of the season, or is this maybe something that we really should look into right now?
Well, there's multiple things actually. So I think some of it's been Zach's slow starts. When he's coming on late, there's not as many points being put up. I know it seems kind of funky to think because he's still getting his buckets, but just think he got started faster. On top of that, the Bulls bench is actually like 26 in scoring, so that's a big problem, and that's why the defense of Lonzo and Caruso has been so, and Javonte Green has been so huge, limiting the opponent's bench and keeping the lead or at least the deficit close. Otherwise, man, it could get scary real quick if something was to happen to that.
Now, one of the things that we've been hearing about the Bulls, also, other than the fact that all offseason, well, we don't know how they'll defend. Well, they've come out, they're one of the top defensive teams in the league, 4th in the league in defense as the graphic states. But also one of the things we keep hearing is, well, they haven't played anybody yet. They beat Detroit twice. They beat New Orleans. Well, coming up next, they're going to see New York on Thursday, Utah on Saturday, Boston on Monday. So could this uptick in competition, could this be the chance to finally see the real Bulls and really see what they need to work on moving forward?
Oh, I think so. Most definitely. Yeah. Now, to the people saying that they've only played week, you can only play who's on your schedule. You can't you don't control that. And I'll also say that these guys are professionals too. And one thing that I think we've noticed more is, back to your point about the offense kind of struggling as we've gone on here. I think some of it you see is them having these consecutive wins in a row. It gets tougher. And tougher. Teams want to be the one to give you that first L, man. They want to hang that on you. So I think you see a confluence of things happening here where their offense is not bad by any stretch, but you definitely know that it's not near where it could be.
Exactly. And when you see them play in half court, I think that's kind of where it shows more. You really only have a lot of high pick and roll with Vucevic. You don't really see the ball swinging around as much. I mean, now let's be honest, like the last few years, the ball moving might have been good, but it wasn't finding the bottom of the net because of who you had on the team. Now you got guys that can put it at the bottom of the net, but where's the ball movement? So that's kind of the issue I've noticed with the Bulls. Anything else that maybe you've noticed?
No, and actually you're spot on. There's actually a thread on Twitter that I just shared where they're talking about Lonzo and Caruso have actually had the ball a little bit too much in those down the stretch situations. And to that point, I think Lonzo has been kind of quicker on the trigger than I think a lot of us may have expected him to be in those same situations. Now, it comes at a time when Vucevic is struggling down the stretch as well. I don't know which one is the chicken or which one is the egg. But I would bet by the end of the year, we see that balance back out and Vucevic take that lead back over, where you're seeing him be the more dominant fourth quarter player. I will say that my preference is for everything to start off with a DeMar and Vooch pick and roll, and Zach run off the screens off of that, because he can get whatever, whenever. So, like, let's say you're running that and nothing works, then you can just give it to Zach and tell him go get a bucket. But I don't think you need to be, because we saw him have a crucial turnover late in that game that almost caught.
Van Vliet swiped it from him, just took it out of his hands.
And for DeMar to have gone as high as he got, there was some stretch where he just wasn't touching the ball. And I'm like, hold on, now you don't. So I think some of that's early season stuff, Billy trying to let them play through it and see what happens. So, like I said, end of the year, I think everything kind of balances back out. I'm not worried in the least bit.
Yeah, I mean, they're off to a great start. They're 4-0. But one last thing before we get on the Hawks, you mentioned the bench play. One thing I noticed is I think DeMar DeRozan is getting a lot more run with like maybe 3 or 4 guys off the bench than anybody else in that Bulls starting lineup. So that makes me think about Kobe White. Where does he fit when he returns from his shoulder surgery?
He is needed bad.
Yeah.
I was a guy who was saying that Kobe might not, have room in this rotation, but looking at how the disparity between the starting production and the bench production, like Caruso and Green and I'm missing one. I know I am.
Caruso, Green, Brown.
And Brown, well, they get you spots, points and spots, but you can't rely on them consistently. And Kobe, while not consistent, he's definitely more of a threat to score consistently than those guys are. And so on this team, where you could have any one of the big three, have an off night, and then your other two starters, Pat Williams isn't very aggressive right now. I'm not really happy with his game. I know he's coming off an injury. I get that, but we need to see some more. And then Lonzo, like I said, sometimes has those moments still where you're just like, come on, Lonzo. So the lack of having Kobe in the start of the season has really shown. And again, that's another thing that's just going to make this offense even better once they finally get healthy.
All right, I know I said that was the last thing, but I'm glad you mentioned Patrick Williams. I saw what you wrote. About Patrick Williams, man. Hey, I do my research. I do the research. So I saw what you said about Patrick Williams. How much longer do you give him? I mean, I'm with you. I've had a few times where I've seen Patrick Williams. I'm like, that must be that upside we got to wait on. So what's going on with Patrick Williams that you're not seeing that you would like to see out of him moving forward that makes you think he'd be a better fit for this team?
So I think in theory, Pat Williams is perfect for this team. But in actuality, we don't see it consistently enough for a team that has playoff aspirations and not just making it. They want to make some noise. Pat, too often, is very, very quiet. And he said it himself. By nature, he's not an aggressive player on the court. And I think that's because he has that point guard in him. That's fine. But on this team, they desperately need him to have some more scoring punch, especially without Kobe there. And what kind of sealed it for me, what made me have to finally put it out on paper, was seeing him go against Scotty Barnes, a player who was compared to him coming out of college and has come out firing. Now, I'll admit, and I do in the piece that you read, Scotty is on a rebuilding team. Pat's got to deal with some veterans. That's fine. But there's moments like last night where Zach was kind of not having it, right? He's not really sure how he's still trying to learn how to close games himself. Pat could have, you know what? Let me take this real quick and go ahead and stop this little run that they're trying to go on. You don't see enough of those moments, the fill in the gap moments, right? You want Pat to be the ultimate glue guy, and I just don't see that from him. He's young. But this team's timeline and his, I'm not so sure are matching up.
And I figured the Scotty Barnes matchup probably was the difference between, because I thought Scotty Barnes looked good, very aggressive. 13 points in the game last night, went right to the rim, even in the loss to Dallas. I mean, he put the ball on the deck, went right at Luka a few times. Patrick Williams, maybe you'll see some 4 for 12s, some 8 for 12s, it's up or down. So I figured that Scotty Barnes was kind of the key for what brought that up about Patrick Williams.
You don't even see Patrick Williams take double-digit shots sometimes. He's taking 4, 5, 6 shots. Like, we need you to do more than that. It's like I said, this bench is not built to score other than Kobe. So even when Kobe comes back, you really, really, and as I pointed out, they're small. So upside, you got to score. Everybody has to contribute on offense, and he's just not doing that enough. He's efficient when he does, but he doesn't do it enough.
To your point that the Bulls are small, last in the league in rebounds. The Atlanta Hawks, I know you write for Soaring Down South. The Atlanta Hawks, 112-104 win over the Detroit Pistons. Trae Young leading the way. But I'm not going to hold you, man. I'm here to talk about Cam Reddish. I'm ready for him to take that next step, man. He's looking good. 18 points per game so far to start. But that spot up 3 has been on point so far this season. Thoughts on Cam Reddish? How can he help Atlanta take that next step in the East?
So Cam was where Pat Williams is now. You kind of saw it, but it was in spurts. It wasn't consistent. And that was the challenge from ownership and management to him this offseason. He's come out firing. And I mean that literally. The first time, I believe he was just kind of shooting them up, and everybody's kind of like, okay, hold on, Cam. But then they started falling, and then they kept falling. And now they're still falling. And now you have to recognize that there might be something to this in a season where we know they openly talked about it before the game the other night, extending him and DeAndre Hunter. So Cam knows what's at stake. And if you recall, Cam was one of the highest rated players going into college at Duke, and just happened to land on the team with a bunch of other star level players. But a lot of the tape of the draft guys coming out, Anthony Edwards out in Minnesota in particular, quote or cite Cam Reddish as the toughest opponent they had to defend. It's in there. It just had to come out. And I think part of it was the going between the starting lineup and the bench, just because of how deep that roster is and how many injuries that they had. Things were just up and down with that team. And now you're kind of seeing him getting comfortable in his role. He's comfortable with his teammates. He's comfortable with his coach. And they're just riding. It's really paying off for him this year so far.
And you mentioned the coach, Nate McMillan. I mean, well-traveled. He was still hooping when I was a kid, when he was on the Sonics. So Nate McMillan is the head coach of this team. And, I mean, they're typically a Nate McMillan-led team when we talk about defense. 97 points allowed, third in the league. What do you look at for Atlanta? What do you look at with Atlanta's defense? I mean, you're talking about Capella, Collins, and then they're getting better on the perimeter. What are your thoughts on their defense?
So we always talk about Hunter, Capella. Reddish gets mentioned in the perimeter defense. Don't sleep on a guy like Kevin Huerter. McMillan cited him for sticking the opponent's best player in the playoffs last season with good results because of the injuries that they had. Bogdanovich is not a great defender, but he plays passing lanes well. Danilo Gallinari, he's not quick at all anymore, but he's big. He's still all of 6'10", right? He's still a big guy. I actually wrote about that a few weeks ago, that they have so much hidden or sneaky two-way potential that in so many different lineup combinations that even with Trae Young this season, he's averaging a career high in steals per game at 1.3. Like, it's really, really coming out for them. They're buying into what McMillan is selling, and you saw it last season, but now within a full off season around him and his staff implementing his principles, it's instantly paying off on the floor, as their offense hasn't necessarily been where it needs to be yet.
When I look at the Atlanta Hawks, I just look at a team that I think this is definitely the prototype of the NBA now. I mean, you got a bunch of guys you got about 5 guys that can literally shoot the three on that team. You name like all Gallinari, Bogdanovich, Reddish, Huerter, Trae Young. John Collins is even getting better at stepping out. John Collins the past few years has had a lot of goofy off the court issues, but last season he kind of got rid of them. And this year, the numbers are down a little bit, but like you said, only 3 games in. Thoughts on John Collins moving forward?
John Collins, I think, is finally coming into that. So, give a superhero analogy. You got Batman and you got Robin, right? Okay. I don't think he's a Robin per se. I think he's better than a standard number 2. I think he's a guy. He's Nightwing. He's not quite Batman. He's better than your average side, because John Collins can take over games, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with an abundance of points, but it's how he goes about getting them. When he jams on you, the roof comes off of the State Farm Arena. Okay, he sucks the air out of opposing arena. I've seen it. We saw it happen in New York. It happened in Philly. Those are big stages. So you got guys here that change the dynamics of a game with one play in Trae Young and John Collins, and then Clint Capella is the eraser. So it's a team that's got a really strong foundation, and then the pieces around it are put together in a way that really, like I said, when you look at it, it's got so much versatility in it that, like you said, it really should be the blueprint if it's not already for other teams.
John Collins, I remember the game he had last year against Brooklyn. I think he had like 28 and 24 or something like that. And that was like the turning point. After that, it was like he's just playing with an abundance of confidence. And I really think that's the key for this Atlanta Hawks team. I think overall, what you're just seeing guys play with confidence. A young team, relatively young team. I mean, they've got veterans too with Gallinari, and Collins has been around for some years. This is a team that made a run to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So now, brand new season, you make a nice run. Where do they fit in the grand scheme for you? Where do the Atlanta Hawks fit into the grand scheme of the East moving forward this year?
So my completely unbiased opinion on this, unbiased, no bias, is that they're gonna be a top 4 team in the East. Now, you've had them routinely placed beneath the Miami Heat. We've seen how they've started. You've had them beneath the Philadelphia 76ers. They've got some issues, we'll say. Right.
Yeah.
And then it gets kind of murky because you've had some people put the Knicks above them.
Yeah.
The Bulls are tough, man. That's going to be I think those 2 teams are going to be who are going to be battling for that 4 or 5 spot this year.
I got them about the same. I see the same thing, like the same confidence, but it's like, I don't really know, man. I need y'all to figure it out on one side of the ball, or somebody else to figure it out to make y'all both of those teams go to that next level.
I think the Hawks have the edge because they got so far with such a banged up team. So you like if they met up today, I'm picking Atlanta. I'm sorry, Chicago, but I've seen them do it in these type of situations. I haven't seen Chicago do it there yet. So that's the other thing about Atlanta is we really don't know what their ceiling is because we didn't see them healthy. Their starting lineup this year, the Young, Bogdanovich, Hunter, Collins, and Capella played 16 minutes together last season. So this is an entirely new group, essentially.
Right, not a good sample size. Not
right.
a really good sample size of greatness.
Can't even grade that at all. So I'm excited to see what they can do, because I think that a lot of people are not necessarily asleep, but they just don't know what to expect because, again, you didn't see it last season.
And also with Atlanta, a lot of injuries, man. You talking about DeAndre Hunter? He missed the game last night with illness. Also, Okongwu, who I think is going to be big for them in terms of replacing Bruno Fernando moving forward. I think that'll be key for Atlanta as well as they try to recover and make another run to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. But elsewhere in the East, man, I mean, you mentioned Philadelphia, man. We got Ben Simmons. We don't know what's going on with him in Philadelphia. Miami. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm on the Miami train. I think Miami might steal the East from Brooklyn and Milwaukee. So let's get your overall thoughts on the East. Who are some teams in the East that maybe we're not watching out for that we should be watching out for?
I've been big on Charlotte since last year. I love what LaMelo Ball brings to them. Miles Bridges looks like he's ready to take that next step. We'll see if they can do that consistently throughout this season. But they were a team that gave the Hawks trouble last season. They were in the play-in. They just gotta be more consistent. It's a young team. And then Gordon Hayward, I'm not sure about his viability on that roster with how they want to play and how they would rely on him with their style. But when he's on, he's ridiculous. It's still crazy to me how good of a scorer he is. And it all just comes back to LaMelo and how much of a difference he's made for that franchise. Mike finally hit on the pick, man. Like, it took Mike some time to hit.
Yeah, it took him forever, man.
He finally hit on a pick. I think LaMelo's a superstar. Right there. He's right on the verge of superstardom. They just got to continue to put some more pieces around. And that's one, though, that I think could make that Hawks level run to get to the playoffs a higher seed than anybody would even expect them to make coming this postseason.
Yeah, it took Mike 20 years and 2 stops, but he finally got it right, man. He finally got the pick right. And also, shout out James Borrego, man, doing a great job with a relatively young team, man. You talk about LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and then Kelly Oubre. Cleveland is a team that's been standing out to me. They won last night against Denver and also beat Atlanta on Saturday. I like what I've seen without Colin Sexton. I know Darius Garland didn't play in the game against Atlanta on Saturday, but I feel like they have an overcrowded front court that's just filled with talent, but somebody's going to have to go at some point. So what are your thoughts on Cleveland, maybe?
They're interesting to me because I agree with you that they have a very talented team, but it's very oddly built. Running Lowry Mark at the 3 has got to be one of the oddest things, but they're having some semblance of success with it because they're just so long. You know what I mean? They really bothered Atlanta on Saturday, and I think that was what led to that loss, is because no matter where you go, even if Lowry doesn't move like your standard 3, he's 7 feet tall. You know what I mean? You got to go
right
around him. And so I don't know how much staying power it has, but it definitely is fun to watch because they go out there and they compete, man, every night.
At the top of the Eastern Conference is the Bulls and the Hornets, but everybody's thinking it's going to be Bucks, Nets, or maybe Heat or Sixers. Thoughts on those 4 teams? I mean, we've already talked Ben Simmons, so pretty much Bucks, Nets, and Miami. What are your thoughts on those 3 teams?
So I'll start with Miami, last one first. Miami, to me, is a talented team, but they're an aging team and a team that could struggle for offense if a couple guys aren't on that night. They're tough, though. They're going to make you work for every bucket that you get. So I think it'll always come down to who is able to shake free of that, who's able to survive that battle that they're going to put you through. Because, again, they're going to have games where I think they struggle to score some. And we already seen Lowry has dealt with some kind of injury here to start the year. That typically doesn't improve as the season goes on with age.
Right.
So that's them. Milwaukee's kind of scary because, and I mean that in a good way for them. They're already talking about repeating and how they don't get no respect. And I'm like, hold on, fam. Like, you all off season. What do you mean no respect, Rodney?
Right.
Like they're ready. It starts with Giannis. You know, he's been working all off season. He's talking like, you know, they now you want to challenge yourself again to do it again. And you got Drew and Chris went over there and won a gold medal, so they're inspired to play better. That's a tough one. And then Brooklyn. They need Kyrie more than anybody wants to admit.
Yeah.
For as much as I love what KD and Harden bring, and I think one could carry you through the regular season, the other carry through the postseason, but there's going to be those moments where you need Kyrie, and those moments matter. And honestly, I think that them and Philadelphia could solve each other's problems. They will just swap Ben and Kyrie. That probably is not on the table because I guess KD poo-pooed it or whatever. Like, okay, that's fine, but they're going to need Kyrie. Like, Kyrie, in case people don't know, is really good at basketball.
Yes, he is.
and he's one of the most dynamic ISO scorers in the game. And so without him on the floor, you see how Harden has struggled somewhat to start the year. KD's going to do what KD does, but he can't do it alone. And that's why they built the team the way they built it. To act like they don't need Kyrie now, to me, is kind of silly.
And look, I like Patty Mills. He's looked good, but he's not Kyrie, man. He's like Patty Mills has been, don't get me wrong, because I would love to see Patty Mills actually start. But Nicholas Claxton, his inability to create shots is going to cost them down the stretch. So you're going to need LaMarcus Aldridge, you're going to need Blake Griffin, you're going to need Paul Millsap to try to kind of offset Kyrie's absence. So for Brooklyn, I'm right there with you. It's all going to come down to Kyrie. I just think Miami's ability to shoot, that might allow them to steal the East. And also Milwaukee, you having some of those guys that went overseas, it might wear them down. But when I began the season, I picked Nets Lakers. Now you don't have to make a pick to come to be in the finals, but if you want to, feel free to go ahead. So
I said Nets Lakers to start the year. I'm going to ride with that for now, but I'm going to tell you that I am worried about all the stuff that's happening with the Lakers already. Like, I feel like they'll fix it and they'll get it corrected, but I mean, like, can you get a week without something? Like, dang, can it not be something for 1 week? Even in a good game from Russell Westbrook, he had 8 turnovers. You know what I mean? Like, there's just something there that they always kind of have to grind out, but that is the road to a championship, is overcoming those obstacles. I'm not sure there's any team that's more talented than them, honestly. Denver won't have Murray for I don't know if he'll play at all this year, to be honest with you, depending on how their season plays out. Utah is a team that's always tough to me, but I've never fully bought into them as a championship contender.
Yeah.
Good luck to beat them.
I'm with you. Last year was the most convincing Utah team I thought we ever had last season when we started jamming. But hey, man, 2-0 lead, couldn't hold it.
Right. There you go. And that's why I never will believe it.
So, all right, I said Lakers Nets. So you Lakers Nets too?
I'm going to have to go with it for at least the next month until I see something. Give me till Christmas. We got to come back at Christmas and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, you most definitely, man, because I'm with you on that. This year, you really don't know, man, because Ben Simmons, Kyrie, I'm like, Kawhi, I don't know, man. Exactly. I wanted to bite on the Clippers again, but I'm like, all right, Kawhi's out with the ACL, so I don't really know, man. Everybody's
talking about we got to give Paul George his flowers, but I'm like, listen, it's still the same. There's not a lot of pressure on him this year's situation, so he's doing well. He's killing. Like Paul George is murdering right now. But does anybody expect him to win anything?
Not without Kawhi.
So we're not getting any answer to the question that we have about Paul George for the past several years. So he's killing though.
He definitely is, man. He definitely is. And also, man, I thank you, man. You've been killing with all this writing you doing, man. Go and promote all. I can't promote all of it because I can't remember all of them, bro. I know Soaring Down South, Last Word, Clock of Sports, Triple Zeros. There's like 4 of them I forgot too. So
man, you got that you named most of them, and then you also got Pippen Ain't Easy with the Bulls articles.
Yeah.
Just trying to stay active, man, and make this thing work. You know how it goes. It's a grind.
Most definitely, man. It's most definitely a grind in this media industry. Final thoughts, man. Final thoughts on whatever you want, man. Because, I just let my guests say whatever they want for the last, 2 or 3 minutes. Whatever you got, bro.
So let me just say this. For the Chicago Bears and their fans, I want you to look at what you're seeing with the Chicago Bulls and take to note how we got here. Ricky O'Donnell, SBN Ricky on Twitter, did a really good piece on how fans drove that change by withholding their dollars and withholding themselves from going to the stadium. And that made the owner take notice. And now look at what we have. A very promising product that we haven't had this kind of excitement since Rose got hurt. Like, since he got traded away. I'm not even playing. Even with the 3 alphas, I don't think we were this excited. So keep that in mind as the Bears are trying to, they tried to dupe you with the new quarterback, right? Shiny new quarterback. They're trying to dupe you with the new stadium. Keep your eye on the prize. It's the same people in charge. This is why you're getting the same results on the field. Okay. You want to have to change. You're going to have to go about it the same way as Bulls fans did because they got that change. Make it happen.
And there you have it, man. That's Josh Buckhalter, man. He writes for Soaring Down South, and I'm not going to even try to name all of them. We just went over this, but thanks, my brother, for coming on the show, man. Salute to you. Positive energy to you. I'm going to have you back on, man. We talking Hawks. We're going to talk whatever, man. So I appreciate you for coming on, man. Remember, World Class Hoops Podcast available on Twitter at WCHP Media, Facebook, World Class Hoops Podcast, and then you see available on all streaming platforms, Anchor, Apple, Google, and Spotify, and YouTube. I'm Chris Rouse. He's Josh Buckhalter. This has been another edition of the World Class Hoops Podcast. Salute to you, Josh, for coming on the show. Salute to you for tuning in, and we out, man. Y'all have a good one.